I've clicked start. Hold on. I've clicked.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there we go.
There is. We need intro music.
Hello, welcome to FPL IQ. I am joined today by FPL Planner Tien. I'm joined by Teacher FPL Lucian. I'm joined by Chatbox, Football Chatbox Ryan. I'm going to start with the first exclamation mark star point. I might be dashing on and off camera today because I'm with my daughter. She's going to be in and out. There's nothing I can do about that. But we're in very capable hands of three people who, in my opinion, they're here for several reasons, and they're exactly the people I wanted to be a part of FPL IQ, and they're here today. And we are going to be going through the dilemmas and questions people are still thinking about before they finalize their FPL teams. For us, it's tomorrow night, but for everyone else, they've got a bit of extra time because we're on the other half of the planet, based in Asia and Australia. So we've got even less time unless we fancy staying up till 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, which I don't think it's that possible. But we'll go through goalkeepers to start with. 6.5 million best midfielders or less, if maybe you find a better player that's under 6.5 million. Trent or no Trent, Salah or no Salah, forwards for 7 million or under, and then going through our drafts. And I'll say, I'm pretty sure we're all different. We're all covering, just by chance, every single kind of tactic and plan and draft. So you're not going to sit here and watch 4 people with the exact same way of thinking, and it's another reason why I got these guys together. So thank you for joining FPL IQ, guys. I think it's going to be a fantastic season. If we just want to do introductions and say hello, we'll start with Lucian, Teach FPL, because I've been with you all pre-season. We did all 20 videos throughout this season. Every single Premier League team covered in depth. How are you doing? How are you feeling about this?
Dubai. And I just looked back at the list, right? And our first video was like nearly a month ago. Man, that was real long ago. And I mean, before we continue, I'd really like to give a shout out to all the new people in the live chat as well. Like we've got Nicholas, Joshua Laidlaw, Shwetix, Shake and Bake. Like, thank you so much for being here first. Just drop a question and we'd be more than happy to answer anything at all. So that would be me. I offer the tactical side of things, although I will definitely promise not to ramble tonight.
And
So that would be me.
I can be more active. I'm one-handed running the stream and feeding a baby at the same time, but I can see Shui's a long-time person of this channel. Shake and Bake is in our Strikers, Keepers, Losers, Weepers team. Teacher FPL Lucian is I'm not going to say traitor, but we're on the same team and he isn't, but that's fine. I'm not holding any grudges. It's just good that if Wolves have a bad game week, we'll definitely be focusing on that, as he's a Wolves fan. Tien, how are you doing? FPL Planner, the meta man himself, how are you feeling?
Very good, man. It's great to be here, and firstly, just kudos to you two. You've done a brilliant jobs with all the videos so far, and I know that's a lot of hard work behind the scene. So just well done. Looking forward to discussing the season tonight, because it's one night to go for us.
And great to have you. And just if people are interested about ranks, I'll come to that in a second, but I want to say, of course, hello, last but not least, because I'm probably the least one here. Ryan, also Football Chatbox, and he does Scout the Game Week. How you doing, Ryan? Feeling all right?
Yeah, not too bad. Looking forward to the discussion, because I know we all have, like mentioned before, different play styles. So I'm looking forward to opinions and views, especially when we get to the draft segment at the end. I think it should be very interesting. So yeah, really excited.
Yeah, very different. So something about us and about the team that we've got together. Someone asked us about our ranks. That's not a thing that we're going to be too focused on here. But I don't. My rank history is pretty terrible. I took big gambles, but that's something that this used to be FPL Haul, my channel, and I want to make this a team channel. I do crazy plans, and for me, I'm number one or I'm a million. You know, my last game week, I went against the grain and it dropped me 150k place or whatever. But these guys have incredible rank histories. So if that is something, can you guys remember off the top of your heads some of your best finishes?
21k, I think.
21k.
2 seasons. Yeah.
And Chen, you've got like 3 back-to-back really good ones, or 2 or 3 back-to-back.
So my best rank was 1.4k. That was 2 seasons ago, and the season before that was 4.3k.
And Lucian, how about you?
I recall a few 5-digit finishes. I think it was 2 seasons ago. I put my team into FPL review, and it said that I finished 99% on the top half of the variance curve. That was when I finished like 30-something K. But really, I'm definitely on the maverick side of things. I will not boast my rank history, but I did at least can say I started with like a 5 million overall rank in game week 13 or something, and I chased it all the way down to 400k. So I've got plans. Yeah, I've got plans.
Yeah, and part of the team that we've put together is we all have different ideas, different plans, and we're not here to just tell you guys to copy moves. We have our own ideas, and we're trying to help you guys discover your own play styles and ways to play the game, not just copy our teams. And you know, there's going to be times here where we all agree with each other. It's going to be 1 against 3. I'm sure that's going to happen today when we talk about bench boosting, but that's the way that we want to go about this. So we're going to go straight into the first point, and it's one that we'll start with the goalkeepers. It is a pick that is potentially the least glamorous of the positions, but equally it's one that you rarely make any moves on. So you can go ahead and get like a 4.5 million and a 4 million goalkeeper. You can get some rotating goalkeepers. You can go something like taking Edison and going 4 million that way, go all the way up and all the way down. But it is a position that is usually quite close together, but it is important because, like I said, we usually only change this on a wild card or if there's like an injury or a suspension, something like that. So we'll start with Ryan. Which goalkeeper are you going to be thinking about? Who would you recommend to start the season with?
So I guess it depends on the goalkeeper position would depend on your entire team structure in terms of finances. I've gone for Onana, but is he probably the best option? I don't really think so. I think for usually in previous seasons we've had like a standout goalkeeper combo that we can kind of pick. This time I feel like it's a bit uncertain in terms of keepers. There aren't that many standouts. We have like maybe on a handful of like 3 or 4 good options, and all of them are like not the best. We can see certain clean sheets been missing out. So I've gone for Onana mainly because I felt like it was between him and Shaw for me for that United defense. And I was like, okay, Onana is 0.5 cheaper, so I'm just going to go for him. There is the possibility that he might get a couple max bonus. There's been that talk about that, but that's only if they keep a clean sheet and if the scoreline is low. So I'm happy to kind of gamble it compared to maybe a Pickford or a Johnston, where I feel like those teams, the clean sheets, they are a bit more not as guaranteed compared to maybe United.
Great. Tien, who you thinking about? Just go back to Ryan. So Ryan, would you just do Onana? Sorry if I missed it. Would you do Onana with a 4 million?
Yes.
Yeah. So no rotation. Okay. Just wanted to.
So Onana with a 4 million. Right now it's Areola, but I think we're all waiting for the Forest keeper Turner.
But you wouldn't actively rotate.
No. If needed, maybe game week 2 against Spurs, but apart from that, not really.
Okay, great. Tien, goalkeepers. So same question. Are you thinking of rotating, or have you just got one goalkeeper in mind?
Yeah, agree with Ryan in that there doesn't seem to be a clear standout option this year. Onana is certainly a good option, but I think for my team structure, which you'll see later, I've just downgraded to a 4.5, and currently I'm on Pickford, not because he's the clear stand-up, the best option or anything. I think Johnston is a very good option, and even Steele is an equally good option as well. But the main reason I'm going with Pickford is because looking at the let's say the next 10 fixtures, they've got a pretty good fixtures run, and then if everything is going according to the news, Turner has joined Nottingham Forest, and potentially he might start playing for them soon. And looking at the rotation between Turner and Pickford, it's actually a very decent run between now and at least now and game week 10, where potentially you only need to play Turner in 2 or 3 games that coincide with Pickford's quite difficult fixture. So for that reason, I think 8.5 million for a pair that potentially could see a very good run of fixtures is what I'm going with.
So I'll jump in with mine because it's pretty much what you've just said, Planner, because I've gone Pickford. Probably my number one choice is 4.5 million. I usually look at the first 8 games of a season because I'll wildcard probably between game week 7 and 10, unless something comes along I need to adapt my plan. And in the first 8 games, Everton are second on the fixture ticker for defence in terms of difficulty. They are a defensive-minded team, Everton. They could play a 4-5-1. He gets lots of saves. He was 3rd last season, so he's a pretty good shot stopper. Therefore, he can get some save points. Steele is a fantastic choice, and Johnson is a fantastic choice, but they have competition. Now, Steele is more 50-50 than I think people think he is. Johnson isn't. Johnston is looking like he's nailed because Guaita's refused to play pre-season. So I'm pretty sure Johnson is a lock. I currently have 2 4.5 million goalkeepers, and it is Pickford and it is Johnston, because I would rotate them a little bit. But this is going to come down to my bench boost plan, potentially. Raya has now gone. So Flecken at Brentford is also a good choice, but he's looked, let's say, unready in the preseason games he's had so far. So I wouldn't necessarily be going there either. And Leno arguably overachieved at Fulham because their defense is really poor. So he got a lot of points because of his saves, but Fulham concede so many shots and chances. I wouldn't be looking at clean sheets there. But I'm not fretting too much about goalkeepers. I think going one with fixtures is important to start with, and I think that's what makes Pickford probably the number one choice. And I'll just rotate just because I'm thinking of bench boost. And if I wasn't, I'd get Turner for 4 million if he goes in time. If not, I'll just probably get Areola. But yeah, I'm looking at Pickford and Johnston. And I really like Johnson as a pick, especially for that first game against Sheffield United. Lucian, how are you feeling about goalkeepers?
Buys goalkeepers for clean sheets nowadays. Really. I think we have to acknowledge that the variety of attack all across the league is so advanced now. We're hiring like international coaches with pedigree of winning leagues in other divisions in other countries that, I mean, we've just gone past the bygone era of Allardyce's and Kirbishleys, So I think keeping clean sheets is much harder than we expect, especially when we consider that Premier League games are going to be way, way longer than 90 minutes, right? You have to be defensively sound for 100 minutes at least to keep a proper clean sheet. I think it's a myth now, really. So having said that, of course, it's still possible to pick clean sheets, and it's all based on fixtures and whatnot. And really, you'd have to have nerves of steel to stick with steel, which is what I'm doing, really. Because I'm being a real cheapskate here. I mean, I'm trying to save this for the Salah draft discussion, but yeah, it's in order to save up money for a banging midfield 5. So I've really gone as cheap as possible across all departments, steel and a 4.0, refreshing my page every 5 minutes, just to see Turner's jersey turn into a Nottingham Forest one because I already have 3 Arsenal players in my squad. I'm just at that stage right now, just waiting.
And that's something we'll talk about that when we look at. So, spoiler alert: you've got Salah in your draft, and when we talk about Salah, no Salah, that is going to be a big point. The fact that yes, you're going to save 0.5 million, so I'm assuming you've not got Estupiñán, the 5 million defender, but he is absolutely nailed. Whereas Steele is, if he plays, you're laughing. But if he doesn't, and you've got a 4 million goalkeeper from Nottingham Forest, if he's in the game in time, that's going to be a big question mark. So we'll get to that. Any more points on goalkeepers before we move on to 6.5 midfielders?
Absolutely.
Just
Yeah. Sorry. No, Ryan, you go
Lucian,
first.
Go on, Ryan. Yeah.
you're going. I guess you're going 4.5 because you want to save money, but why not go for a more certain 4.5?
Because I just don't see the merits of it anywhere else, which actually brings to my second point. The nature of a goalkeeper's points, even though across time they average out, the nature of a goalkeeper's points plays a huge bearing on our perception of the goalkeeper. So a very big example was Bern Leno. When we talked about Bern Leno and Fulham in general, right, me and Rob across the team previews, we noted that Bern Leno is not like Raya and Sanchez, where they would get 6 points when they keep a clean sheet, and they will get 5 points when they don't. That's the kind of goalkeeper that we like, right? But if we look at Bern Leno, he will get 2 points when he concedes a goal. He will get 11 when he gets a clean sheet. So, it averages out to be the same, but Jason Steele, right? As much as he has a mistake in him, he also has an assist within him. That's part of De Zerbi's vertical football, and that is what I absolutely love. We just shouldn't underestimate the power of the first wild card. And fine, if I make a mistake and Steele is not guaranteed, there has to be really, really good reason for it. I don't see that as of now, and really, I'm okay. I'm safe with the fact that Steele has that highest ceiling, at least compared to Johnston and Pickford, who I have never ever seen rack up double-digit scorelines with a clean sheet. So that's my argument with Steele.
Yeah, that's fair, but I think FPL and FZ make a good point. Like the ceiling is generally low for goalkeepers anyway, especially when we look at 4.5 goalkeepers. So the reason why I'm not so keen on Steele is because their fixtures are not as good. So you're looking at Man United away, Liverpool, Man City away, Newcastle at home in the next 8 to 10 games. Whereas for Pickford, especially if you can put Turner in a good rotation, basically you see bottom half teams all the way through. Most of them are home games as well. Between now and game week 10, you're avoiding Arsenal, Liverpool, and even Aston Villa away. You can avoid that fixture as well, and pretty much Green's fixtures all the way through. But I think at the end of the day, the difference will probably be small anyway. So I don't think we need to spend too much time on picking which one. I think you just pick any of them, they probably do just fine.
And that's the thing. You're right. The ceiling is low, but if you've got a goalkeeper who's not starting, that you can't get any lower. That's the floor for Steele. It could be a no pointer. Henderson signs for Forest and he's fit. Turner doesn't start. You can't get lower than 0. Well, you could, I guess. You could have a goalkeeper who gets sent off, but realistically speaking, maybe not. So let's go on to the 6.5 million midfielders. So this one is hotly debated because it feels like no matter what drafts people are creating, Salah or no Salah, 1 premium, 2 premium, 3 premiums, it feels like a lot of us are having to get a 6.5 million midfielder as our 4th or 5th midfielder. So I think it's a good area to talk about. We'll kick off with we'll go reverse order this time. So Lucian, you want to start off on the best 6.5 million midfielder, or less if you find there's better value lower?
The spoiler, I do not have any 6.5 midfielders. Yeah.
Can't afford
really,
it. Can't afford it, can you?
Yeah. Yeah. 1 month ago, my first draft had 2 6.5 million midfielders. Okay, so the argument here is that the thing about 6.5 million midfielders is that they have, in FPL, right? As a player, picking a player, they need 4 factors to do well. They need 90 minutes. They need to play for a good team. they need to have the lion's share of the good teams of chances, and most importantly, they need finishing ability, right? If you have good chances and you don't finish, no point. You're basically Mbermo. If you have the lion's share but of a relatively small XGI team, you are Eze. If you you guys don't see where this is going. If you are part of a big team, a huge XGI attacking team, but you have a small share of it, you are Mitoma. And yeah, that's how it is. That really is how it is. So I think when we are picking a 6.5 million midfielder, you are looking at the data and you're looking for the player that is going to break past the ceiling that has been holding him back. If you pick Mbomo, you are banking on him to actually finish his chances. If you are picking Eze, you're banking on Palace to improve as a whole. If you are picking March or Gross or Mitoma, then you are banking on them finally being the actual talisman of the whole squad, with Caicedo gone and with the whole number 9 rotation thing and whatever. It's really as simple as that. Identify the flaws in what the general perception of that team is, and if you can beat that flaw, you strike gold, really. So that's how I view it. That's why I don't have a perfect answer for you.
I'm gonna go straight in and just say Matoma. I'm in on about this. I don't even have to have a 6.5 million midfielder because I could go higher if I need to. I just can't ignore those 3 fixtures. March was all over Mitoma for XG and all the stats like that, but Mitoma gets the goals, he gets assists, he got points. Towards the end of the season, people will argue he massively slowed down, but he still did get chances, he just started to miss them. But also, Brighton were playing like 2-3 games a week towards the end of the season, which they could potentially be doing in the Europa League, but that won't start till I think after game week 5. So I just can't ignore Luton and Wolves and West Ham as those 3 fixtures. Now, Eze is a fantastic choice, and I really, really wanted him against the Sheffield United side because I think they're going to be so bad. They've just lost Sanderberg. They lost the 2 players that they loaned from Man City. They've lost a star striker. They're there for the taking, but the problem with Palace is they don't have that opening run of fixtures, whereas Mitoma does. If there was another player that piqued my interest, it is Diaby at Aston Villa, because he could be a striker next to Watkins, or he can be an advanced midfielder or winger. I think he could be fantastic, but I just can't seem to get... Even I can get Bruno Fernandes and Maddison, which we know now Kane could likely be leaving. I just still can't comfortably take out Mitoma, because it's not just this first game against Luton, which is so nice. He's got 3 back-to-back fixtures, and then a couple of difficult ones, but if you can bench him for them, they're on another nice run. But just that it's that simple. He's nailed on to start the season with, and those 3 fixtures are just so good. I can't see past him. As much as I think Eze would be fantastic, Diaby might need to get used to the Premier League. We'll have to wait and see, but I just think... Oh, and Mbermo is obviously someone we've talked about before who could be out of position, but he could be wide. Too many coulds for him. Mitoma is nailed. Mitoma has 3 fantastic first fixtures. It's cut and dry, simple as that. I want to take him out. Every time I do, I just think no. And his percentage is so high, I don't want to be influenced too much by effective ownership, but if I don't start the season with a Brighton attacking midfielder or striker, and the 30+% owned, could be a big issue. Tien, go to you. 6.5 million midfielder or less?
Yeah, so there's the same problem with the goalkeepers we just talked about. There's no perfect sort of answer. There's no clear standout option. As Lucian said, there's pros and cons for each of those options. So, and I can't argue with your point about Mitoma is definitely a great option. But the way I think about it is, and it will probably become a bit more apparent when you look at the draft, my draft later. It's more about, yes, you want Brighton attack, you want probably Brentford attack in your team, but then are there any alternative options? So at the moment, I'm not going Mitoma because I have a 5.5 million option that could be an alternative to get into that Brighton attack. So therefore, Mbomo is my choice at the moment. Like, yes, of course, he's probably been hitting the post more often than hitting the net, but he's improved. I think toward the end of the last season, he's improved, and without Tony, it seems like he's on pens as well. So there's more root for points, and he's certainly more of a talisman in Brentford team attack as it stands, compared to a Mitoma, for example, where the goals and the assists could come from any of those front line. And the other thing with Brighton is that yes, you got very good 3 openings fixture, but then it turned bad pretty quickly after that. So are you gonna switch or are you gonna stick around? Whereas I'm looking at Brentford, I'm happy to stick around for at least 10 game weeks or probably until the first wild card. So, but yeah, as I said, there's no perfect answer for this. I think you can make the case for any of those sort of 4 or 5 popular options at the moment. So Mitoma and Bomo as a people talking about Diaby as well. Is probably going to be a good option. A bit of a wait and see for me at the moment, but yeah, could certainly be a good option. And I don't think you can go too wrong with any of them, really.
Yeah, I don't think there's a bad choice. Like, if you've gone for Mbomo, if you've gone for Matoma, if you've gone for Diaby, if you've gone for Eze, they're all good choices. It's just getting down to the finer points, and 2 of them could bang, all of them could bang, none of them could bang. If you've chosen one, I don't think it's a wrong choice. Ryan, 6.5 million or less midfielder, who are you looking at?
So I had Mitoma in one of my drafts. I think he is a really good option. But after FPL Heavens have given us a 5.5 Brighton forward, it allowed me to switch funds about. And that ended up being, now I can go Mitoma. I can also upgrade my Mitoma because of that. And now we entered the 7.5, even the 8 million range of being able to touch like a Martinelli or someone like that. And then I'm like, Mitoma or Martinelli? And then I'm like, okay,
Ryan.
right. Yes.
And Ciso is not gonna be a popular pick, man.
No, it's not NC.
It's
I didn't go
Pedro.
to NC, so don't worry.
Yeah.
It's Pedro.
Just okay.
But yeah, so because of the funds available, I've been able to like go up. But I have also got a budget midfield option. And I've gone for Garnacho, and that's mainly due to the initial few games I think he will play, given that he's been playing a lot in preseason and all. Now there is the thing of Anthony Martial being back in training that could probably be a problem, but Lucian touched on the games have been a bit longer. Now I feel like Garnacho, whether he starts or comes off the bench, I feel like he's going to make an appearance in every single game, and he's the FPL asset that everyone thinks Anthony is supposed to be. Whereas I feel like Garnacho is more direct, probably better in finishing as well compared to Anthony. Obviously minutes slightly less maybe than Anthony, but end product might be better. So I've gone there, 5 million, can't complain, especially if he's going to start the first 3.
He's certainly the maverick pick. He has a really, really high ceiling. If you're someone who has got a Salah draft going on, he's definitely one that you could potentially risk and maybe have like a 4.5 million defender backup. I don't think that's a particularly bad pick. Just before we move on, I'm just going to rearrange the order just a little bit, just so it makes a bit more sense. We'll talk about the forwards now. So we've talked about goalkeepers, midfielders. I think defenders is pretty staple. We were going to talk about forwards after Trent, no Trent, Salah, no Salah, but it feels like it makes sense to finish off players specifically before we talk into the wider team shapes and then our drafts. So now forwards for 7 million or under. We'll start with Tien this time. Tien, who are you thinking for forwards who are 7 million or under? So Haaland is, I mean, come on, he's in like 85-90% of scores. We're talking now about Haaland's partner, or maybe no partner, maybe go one up front, but who are you looking at to partner the big Norwegian man up front?
Can we go 8 and under?
No, that will be too easy.
Yeah, no. So I'm not gonna go Jackson. I know that he's probably one of the sort of remaining pigs after the fallen of Nkunku. But he seems a bit raw for me, and I'm not a big fan of getting a lot of sort of new players into the league, into my team. I try to avoid as much as possible. So for that reason, I've kind of already hinted earlier, and Ryan mentioned that as well. I think currently João Pedro is my pick. He's 5.5. Obviously, no guarantee that he's going to start, but it looks like he might start more often than not. And even if not, he probably will come on. So for 5.5, obviously you can't expect him to score or get a return every week. But he seemed, to be very attacking. He's going to get a share of the return from the Brighton front line, by the look of it, and potentially on pens as well. Who knows? But as Ryan said, he's the FPL gift from FPL God, and I have to take it. Especially, as you know later, why it makes sense for my draft, because I need a budget option. And can he cover Mitoma? It's hard to say, but given that I expect the returns will come from anyone in that Brighton front line, so it could be anyone on any given day. I certainly can't be disappointed if Mitoma get anything in game week 1 and Pedro got nothing, because it could be the opposite the next game week. You're just gonna live with, make your own bed and gonna live with it.
Yeah, I think Pedro, especially after preseason matches, is coming in as a very, very hot choice, especially again, people who need to save money, or if you're just not that interested in the strikers. Now the likes of Jesus is injured and you were looking at Nkunku. I think he's a pretty easy pick, and I think he's in a few of our drafts as well. Lucian, who are you backing as a 7 million or less forward?
A week ago exactly, I had Jackson in my team because I did not rate the Liverpool defense at all. I still don't rate them. It was just convenient. Shout out to Rubber Ducky, by the way. Hi. Because he was the first one that recommended Jackson. Then I moved on to my original draft, which had Julian Alvarez in the side. This was despite the reports that Kevin De Bruyne was feeling good. He had a good 30 minutes in a Community Shield, and he came on with an impact. I mean, it's there, but I do feel that the ceiling for Alvarez is much, much higher. Even if he gets like 45 minutes off the bench, Like we talk about how João Pedro does having potential, even if he comes on as a sub, or if he goes off early, subbed off. Yeah, I feel that Alvarez is still one of the few people having a super high ceiling because of the doubt on Phil Foden's minutes. If not, well, I myself have João Pedro in my draft simply because of that power 5 midfield I cannot look past. But I'm saving that discussion for later again. João Pedro, I feel, is only part of the discussion because we cannot nominate a 5.5 million midfielder. If we did, we'd all be at least having a wider discussion. But yeah, no one stepped up for 5.5. Not Chukwuemeka, no. So really, it's João Pedro is the cheapest, most popular available guy. And I just want to give a shout out to Yohan Wissa. I think for people who are not convinced by Mbomo, Yohan Wissa has to be part of the conversation. At 6 million, you cannot argue. You cannot argue with the positions and his ability as well, because yeah, it's all there. It's all there, just waiting for a bandwagon or an explosion happen.
Yeah, people always need to sort of be a bit more realistic. We're so used to such big scores from like Salah and Haaland that you get a player in who's only 6 million, which Wissa is, right? And he doesn't score every game week, and people are thinking, oh, he's rubbish, get him out, because we've been given some players over the last few years that have set the bar so high that we're not used to a cheap asset not delivering, and that could be an issue. So people need to sort of reevaluate what they expect from players for certain prices. But I think they're incredibly strong options. Ryan, who are you feeling?
So I initially had Visa and Pedro in a 3-4-3 draft, but I've later switched that because I did see a few rumors with Brentford looking for a striker. And that kind of put me off Visa because I was like, oh, will this be a transfer that I'll have to deal with very soon? But I still think it's a good shout for the start at least, especially given the first fixture is Spurs, and we've seen in preseason Spurs haven't been able to keep clean sheets and will give chances for Brentford. So I feel like Visa could be a good option. Pedro, obviously, we've spoken about already. Pretty good shout. Jackson, before Nkunku's injury, I thought he would have been a good shout, but I think I don't know how much Nkunku's injury is going to affect Chelsea's attack as a whole, because I felt like Nkunku was the guy who would provide Jackson. Now, obviously, you have Rabadaki mentioned Chukwuemeka. I'm going to butcher his name, but
Yeah.
he might play the number 10, but I don't know. Is he on the same level as Nkunku? Probably not. So I feel like the output from Jackson might be affected because of that as well. So for me, Pedro, Visa maybe, and an completely outside shout if he gets fit is probably Martial, but not sure how many game weeks he'll be fit for.
Shake of the heads all round with the Martial. So just to rewind on a couple of points, you said about Martial just then, and you said earlier about Garnacho. I think a big Sancho-shaped hole could come into those plans because he was played down the middle as well in pre-season. And just to go back to Alvarez shout from Lucian, look, if you're the kind of manager who you're fine week in, week out, quickly scouting every single team sheet to pray that name is on that list, or you're watching the game, it gets to 60, gets to 70 minutes, and you're thinking, do I want him to come on now, or do I hope one of my subs come on? If you're the kind of manager that can deal with that, then that's fantastic. If we get an early league that Alvarez, let's say we get an early City team league and it's got Foden, it's got Alvarez, then, or even a defender, say Akanji, that's fantastic for one game week. We're not planning for one game week. And the problem with Alvarez is, if I see his name on that team sheet against Burnley, fantastic. I'll quickly put him in there, and then he is a transfer going out within 2 game weeks. And every week you don't want to take Alvarez out because City have such a good run of fixtures, and if he plays, he's such a fantastic option. Every week is just painful. If you can deal with that, then that's fantastic. But Pedro is likely going to start. Wisa is likely going to start. Jackson is likely going to start. Alvarez, there is absolutely no one, probably at times not even Pep, who could tell you well in advance Alvarez is going to be starting this game. But with the way that I'm planning my season, I wouldn't be surprised if I see Alvarez, he'll possibly be in for my guy who's been in for the entire of pretty much this preseason, and my guy's Jackson. With or without Nkunku, watching him play, looking into how he moves, I've stupidly fallen in love with him, more so than I did with the likes of when Werner came over, but he looks so good. So look at the opposition. They've got Liverpool. They concede goals. They've been a lot better since the World Cup, but if we were to say that Jackson could score against them, I don't think that's impossible to say. And it's not just a 1 week game. Chelsea are right up the top of the fixture ticker for the first 8 game weeks, so you could comfortably get him for Liverpool, and then he can maybe not have a great game week 1, but he's there, he's ready for that wonderful run of fixtures. He's already got 2 goals and 3 assists in preseason, so we're not looking at a player who just gets goals. He also will create for his teammates as well. And looking back from last season, most of his goals came towards the end for Villarreal. All 12 of his goals came inside the box. So I've said the whole time, when I saw Nkunku's price, I said Jackson is the 9. He's going to be the furthest guy forward. Nkuku will be a great shout, but he's 0.5 million more expensive than Jackson. Jackson is going to be the guy leading the front line. I expect Chelsea to be top 8 easily. Arguably, they could be trying to get top 4 once again. I think Jackson will work in a Poch system, so it's a 4-2-3-1. He'll be the 1. If it's a 4-3-3, he'll be the central one of the 3. So for 7 million, you're getting probably the team with the best fixtures for the opening 8 to 10 game weeks, and you're getting their main striker who basically has no competition, and he looks really good already. So he's also great in terms of planning and strategy wise because he's 7 million. If you want to go down to a 5.5 Pedro afterwards because he's doing well, you can go down. If you need to go up a little bit, you can go up a little bit. Say Darwin gets nailed at Liverpool, you can find 0.5. He's at a good price point, so you can have him if he's got great fixtures and he takes to the league like a duck to water. Or if he's not doing well, you can go up or down. I think he's well priced within there. So Jackson's going to be my pick for 7 million or less, and he's been in my draft for pretty much the whole time. So that's going to be the part about the forwards. Now it's going to be to the more general squad structure questions that people are going to be talking about, and that's because they're expensive and they impact not just one position, but your whole team shape and setup. So the first part here is we're going to talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold, one of the top FPL choices of the last few seasons. Fantastic player, new role, new position potentially at times. It could be in the middle, it could be at wing back, depends on what Klopp's going to plan for that game. Are any of you interested? Yes, Trent, or no, Trent? So we'll start with let's start with Lucian. Lucian, how are you feeling about Trent or no Trent?
Well, he's a midfielder now. I think what we have yet to study is his actual role as a number 6. As the deepest lying midfielder, we know what he can potentially do in attack, but we don't know what he does in defense. We don't actually know whether if he contributes to defense. So it does make me wonder who will do majority of the defending in Liverpool itself. And I suspect that Liverpool are basically aiming to do this sort of game plan where they dominate most of the ball so that they don't have to do the defending. That could be a thing. But for me, what's more concerning is that Trent disallows you owning an 8 million midfielder. Like, my very, very, very first draft had Trent because I did not trust any of the 8 million or, and I was more than happy to go with the 6.5 million bracket. But now that Wolves have lost their manager and Arsenal midfielders are dropping one by one, you know who's left. And we are starting to see this cream of the crop surface in midfield. And I'm just very happy to sacrifice Trent for that power 5 midfield. Really, that's where my house is. And I'm cool with that.
Ryan, how are you feeling about Trent?
No Trent. I've been no Trent from the start, mainly due to the fact that if I'm paying 8 million for a defender, they better be keeping clean sheets week in, week out. If they're not going to keep clean sheets, then I'm like, it's like me throwing a 3-pointer, and I'm not a basketball player, and I'm hoping that I'll hit 3-pointers every time because I'm like, oh, Trent is very attacking. Nah, that's not going to work. He's not going to be getting you a goal or an assist every single week. So 8 million, he better be keeping clean sheets. And it seems like even in preseason, Liverpool haven't been really keeping clean sheets. We've seen them also in their average positions. If you were to look in the preseason games as well, it seems like Trent is playing in that inverted fullback role where now they're trying to play like the Pep style system where he gets like a box in midfield, and it seems like Trent is occupying that space. So I'm like not really looking forward to it. I think you can find better alternative defensive options that are cheaper and equally as attacking as well.
Yeah. Tien, Trent? No Trent?
No Trent, unfortunately. No, he's definitely it's always been a very good or great FPL option. We're in love with his sort of more attacking position and some of the wonder goals and a lot of assists toward the end of last season. So I think it makes sense for a lot of people to say, go straight to Trent as soon as the season opens. But I think it makes a lot of sense to go without him because, the money that he can get by just downgrading him to someone like, a Chilwell or, all these sort of 5 and 5.5 million defenders probably won't be as productive in terms of attacking returns. But as Ryan said, we're not getting a defender primarily for their attacking returns. Clean sheets should be their bread and butter, and then obviously the attacking returns will be the cream on the top. So, perhaps 8 million is worth it if he can get sort of the consistent clean sheets and, an attacking return every, say, 3 or 4 game weeks on top of that. But yeah, I don't think Liverpool defensive performance has improved significantly to keep clean sheets. I can't remember what game was the second last preseason game that I watched. It's like a massive hole on that side because of Trent moving up, and I don't think whoever the partner of Van Dijk in the centre back position is capable of covering Trent. So yeah, I'll see them concede against Chelsea and even Bournemouth for that matter, which is probably the fixture that you would think that they have to keep a clean sheet for Trent to be worth it, and I doubt that is even the case. So yeah, currently no Trent.
Yeah, it's 4 no's because it feels like it might be an old-fashioned point of view, but clean sheets is what I look for first in a defender, and I just don't see them for Liverpool. They've got Chelsea, Newcastle, Villa, Spurs, and Brighton in the first 8 games, and he's 8 million now. So basically, it's giving you that choice. Do you want to try and get a clean sheet and maybe something from him for 8 million, or do you want to have a Martinelli in your side, or a little bit 0.5 million, have a Bruno, have an Erdegaard? It's too much. To look at him. I've said for most of pre-season, I don't like that new midfield position that he's got. He's a danger when he gets well up that right side, basically playing at right wing and crossing rather than sitting deep. There's less space in central midfield in the Premier League. It's not the crossing angle or the passing angle or the assist angle is not as good from that really deep line position. Look at the likes of when McAllister was further up down the middle for Brighton compared to when he was deeper. He was like a non-FPL asset when he's that deep. And that's where the area, that different role, but position-wise, Trent would be similar. He's still learning that new role. So he did it for like the last 10 games of last season. He's still learning how to do it, which I don't particularly want to invest 8 million into, a player learning a new role. The team is learning this new formation and still practicing out themselves as well. And the fact that Fabinho's gone. So someone's going to have to play defensive midfield. And that could be Trent. Trent might be the one who has to stay back and be the DM. Not in this unique role he's got. Because at the minute, Thiago's also had another bid in for him. But that's not his position anyway. They have no central defensive midfielder. Except Trent, who could play that position. So it's just a no all round, I think, for Trent. I don't like the new position. Don't think they're going to get a lot of clean sheets. And yeah, he might pop up with an assist or 2, but by that time, you could be having defenders with a couple of clean sheets or a cheeky headed corner or something like that. So that one is more of a simple dilemma because we've all agreed, and I think most people are not particularly backing Trent to start the season. But the bigger question, of course, and one that does split us a little bit, is arguably the greatest FPL asset of all time. It is Mohamed Salah. Yes, Mo, no, Mo. Where are we going to go? Let's start with, because I know that we're split. So let's have the yes first. So, Lucian, I think, are you the only yes one? I'll have to check the drafts again later. But Lucian, yes, Mo, no, Mo, go.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Salah and Haaland are the only two players that have not left my initial draft. Everyone else is dispensable. This again, is not me immediately thinking that Salah will go on a 12-pointer in game week 1. It's more based on the fact that if you do make a mistake and Salah does not bang, I can just sell him and buy literally anybody. That is really the thought process here, because when I make my sides, whether it's the beginning of the season or after a wild card, I always aim to hold the transfer. So I make a team for 2 game weeks, which suits Salah perfectly because he has Bournemouth. And then I play my 2 free transfers with a -4, and I do something fancy with it. But that's how it is. It's a purely tactical decision that I own Salah for now, and honestly, 2 game weeks is perfect to figure out whether Luis Diaz, Diogo Jota, Darwin, or Gakpo starts as the third forward. And when I see that, it's just a simple 4.5, 5 million downgrade, and I spend the rest of my free transfers buying everyone else. So it's really purely a structural decision, and I'm perfectly happy with that because alongside Salah, I have a midfield I'm very, very happy with.
Ryan, how are you feeling? Mo?
So I have Salah right now in my draft. I didn't start with Salah, and that was because I wanted to see what like Liverpool's system was going to be. Because if you remember last season, he was playing quite wide, and we didn't really get to see Salah, even though he did get the numbers at the end of the day. The Salah we knew wasn't really there, but it seems like now with this new system where they're playing that box, it means the 2 wide wingers for Liverpool get a bit more central. With Gakpo if he starts or Jota if he starts in the center, they tend to drop deep. With the Diaz and Salah more inwards. Now that does change a bit if Darwin is starting number 9. Then you see the 2 wingers a bit more wider. But it seems like Klopp prefers right now, I guess, Gakpo and Jota in that striker role to help with the build-up and also the defensive work as well. Whereas you might, I guess, game week 2, you might see a Darwin start and then Salah may be a bit wider. But I've gone Salah. Is he a must-have? I don't think so. I think you can still make a really good draft without Salah. And I'm well aware that if Salah does continue to do well, he will probably stay in my team because okay, we can say that we want to downgrade him and we might downgrade him. But if he does like set a house on fire, then you have to accept the fact that you're going to have 2 premiums in your team and you're going to struggle a bit in terms of funds elsewhere. So I'm okay with that. Sacrifices will be made elsewhere if it has to be made. But for now, I'm happy to start with it and see how it goes. And also because it's hard to figure out the other Liverpool players in attack. Too much rotation.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be no. It's a no Salah. He's not. I made a Mo draft because we all like to make lots of drafts, right? But just too many compromises, and I just feel I've already talked about the fixtures that Liverpool have got at the start. I don't think it's fantastic. I've already talked about the fact that they're learning sort of this new formation. Yes, they did well. We had comments already saying like, yeah, they did really well at the end of last season, but they literally played the bottom 5 clubs in the last 10 games. They're not doing that this time around. So it's a no, because what you can do with that money, if you're going to captain him, you're only going to captain him probably in game week 2. Haaland still is at home, and I know Newcastle is great, but still not a terrible captaincy option. Or you've got Saka away at Crystal Palace. It's not the worst. To bring in and restructure and have a certain squad structure just so you can captain one player in 1 game week, it's not a 1 game week game, FPL. And when I thought about the first 8 game weeks or the first 5 game weeks, Salah might go crazy in game week 2. Yeah, good job. He goes and gets you 2 goals, 3 bonus, whatever. But Haaland could match that any single time. And all the other sacrifices you've made, add them up over the game weeks. So if you've got Salah, you're downgrading probably 3 players, and that's not 3 squad players, that's probably 3 players in your first 11. So that's like Salah and 2 6.5 midfielders against 3 8.5 midfielders. So it's like Salah, Matoma, and Mbuemo against Saka, Bruno, and Martinelli, and 0.5 million to upgrade another position like a 4.5 million defender to a 5 million defender. So yes, it's going to be hide behind your couch material in game week 2, but if you look at what he's going to do game week 1 to 8 and you come with the other players in your starting 11 and compare that to the players you have instead of Salah with that money and add up the points over the 8 game weeks, I think you earn more points over that course without him and that money spread around. Of course, it's fantastic. If we had the budget, or if we're doing fantasy draft, you want Salah in your team. That's a given. But I think, Ryan, it was you that touched upon it as well. And what I really noticed when I owned Salah a lot last season, depending on the team they're against and depending who plays at striker. So if Trent plays at right wing back, Salah's a great choice because Trent goes down the wing and Salah will push inside. But now Trent is looking more central. Okay, fine. So if Gakpo plays as the striker, that's great because that means he'll drop as the false 9 or a little bit deeper and Salah will be the one who gets behind. But if Darwin plays as striker, out goes Salah to the wing.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah.
So if Trent is not at right wing back, Salah's the one on the wing. If Darwin is playing as striker, Salah gets pushed out to the wing. And he touches that touchline, sideline all the time. So you've got to hope of a perfect storm of Gakpo playing and or Trent back at right wing back. So if you've got Salah in your side and you see Trent in midfield and you see Darwin as striker, and you're going to spend a lot of that time frustrated during the game because Salah's going to be kicking it on the wing and you want that man in that penalty area.
I do agree with that. I think if you obviously get either Gakpo or a Jota in the striker, you're laughing because then Salah is more inwards. But if you have Darwin, then it's a bit of a problem and it's going to be a pain. I think the other thing that has kind of enabled this Salah draft is the lack of forwards. All the forwards keep dropping like flies. And that has helped us to fund the midfield. Now, this could become a problem if we start seeing in a couple of game weeks, forwards start appearing, and then you're like, oh, I don't have money. Now, where do I go? Then that's where you end up making the sacrifice. But I feel like for now, given that our forward lines are basically a Haaland and a 5.5 striker, we're able to like build this packed or powerhouse midfield 5 that Lucien keeps saying. The moment one striker, even a Gabriel Jesus, if he returns back in game week 4 or something, and he starts scoring, then you're like, okay, now I need funds. Now where do I go? And then you start looking at Salah. And you're like, yes, bye.
That's what I mean. If Pedro's not an option, you're not touching any other midfielder for 5.5 million. And people have spent every penny that they've got to basically just have Haaland and Pedro up front. And once Pedro gets rotated out, you're really stuck. You're probably playing a 4-5-1, which a lot of people want to do because that means you've got a 4.5 million or 4 million defender coming off your bench. It's people will say you can sell Salah because you can then spread the funds after that. But you're using transfers and you're planning transfers already. Whereas if you've already got the money spread around, you can just take out that player, put in that player. Tien, Salah, no Salah?
Sorry to disappoint you, but I am Salah. So
I thought it was 2-2. All right, so it's 3 against 1.
Yeah.
All right, I get it. No problem. Whatever.
And so looking at us, we currently like 75% Salah and 25% no Salah, which I think is opposite to what we see on Twitter in the community. It's certainly 25 or less % Salah from what I've seen. But anyway, I see all the points for and against, and once again, there's no perfect answer. Because if there was a perfect answer, we wouldn't be here talking about it for over an hour, and countless number of content creators and people are still debating. But yeah, for me, Salah has never left any of my draft since day one. Now I'm jealous of the non-Salah drafts that I've seen. The money is being spread around. You get double Arsenal attack, double United attack. You can get a Madison punt or you know, a power 5 midfield, as he said, and all that sort of thing. And he can maybe throwing in Watkins for fun as well up top. But that is actually the exact reason why I'm going with Salah. Because at the moment, I'm looking at about 10 good sort of mid-price options that I can go with. And I struggle to pick. And Martinelli is great, but then he's got his flaws. Bruno and Rashford double up looked good on paper, but United haven't been scoring goals. They got some sort of mixed fixtures at the start. Madison, who knows how he's gonna do with or without Kane potentially. Richarlison, would he become an option? Chelsea attacks, I don't want to touch them until game week 3. So there's a lot of uncertainty for me. And so for me, I'm like, you know, game week 1, there's a lot of unknown. So let's go for the known quality. Salah is a proven asset. We know, you know, what is it, 5 or 6 seasons now, and he's amongst the top scorer in terms of FPL points, right? He looks good pre-season, involved in pretty much every game they played so far in attack. A couple of games that I watched, he tend to drift inside a lot, obviously, you know, depending on whether Darwin plays or not, as he said. But I trust Salah because he's been a proven asset for many years. And as Lucien said, if things go wrong 2 weeks in, if things doesn't go my way, yeah, the Salah money can fund anyone I want. So, you know, if I want Jackson up top, I can get Jackson and still got decent money left over to get any midfielder that I want. You know, if Kane is actually gone by then and Richarlison become a real option, you know, I can get him in just a single double move from game week 3 onwards. So I'm open for that. But then, as Ryan said, I'm open to keeping him as well, because if he scores against Chelsea, and he's likely going to be my captain in game week 2, because there's no point owning Salah and not thinking about captaining him in game week 2, right? So I'm captaining him. If he scores a hat-trick in game week 2, happy days. I'm happy with the points, and I'm happy to keep him because, you know, if we look at my draft in a minute, I would try to have a structure that still allow me the flexibility to move things around without having to sell Salah. So I'm not actually booking in transfer that I have to sell Salah. Obviously, that is an option. If that Salah pick doesn't work out, I'm happy to sell him. There's no string attached, right? So there's flexibility in having someone that you trust, that you know that will you know, has been proven. And then 2 or 3 game weeks in, I'll reassess.
I'll just disagree with one thing there, and that's the idea about Salah going to anyone and being like one move. I understand what you're saying because Salah can go to any one player, but that is against the point that I'm saying, where Salah's money that I have, because I don't have Salah, is spread amongst 4 or 5 players. So if you go from Salah to Richarlison, that's great. You've got, what, 5.5 in the bank if you make that move? Mm-hmm. But then you're going to have to use 2 or 3 or 4 transfers to then start spreading that money around. So it's not just one transfer. It would be Salah down to Richarlison, but then you've got Richarlison surrounded by a weaker squad because you've not separated your money. So I've got my money spread out against my squad. So if I lose one of my players for another, the whole quality of my starting 11 without Salah doesn't go down. If Salah is out for you, you go down and you've got money in the bank, but you've got to spend transfers. You might have to take hits to then spread that 5.5 million around your squad, which is what I'm saying. So yeah, you can go down 21, but you're going to be having a weaker squad that he'll basically be with. We will go on to our drafts. My daughter is currently grabbing my leg, so I won't be the first one because mine is going to be the most different one because I'm the only one who doesn't have Salah. So Lucien, we're going to start with you and your draft, because I think yours is a little bit different. Definitely I would not class this as template despite having Salah. let's have a look. And when we go through our drafts, guys, please read out your full squads for people who are listening and not watching.
Allah's template? I did not know that. Wow. I mean, I say this because I am subscribed to Analytics FC. I know plenty of people in Analytics FC, and FPL Reviews optimum algorithm just does not have Salah, anyway up there. Because I do have to state that the template right now is to Arsenal, to United, and a 4.5 million midfielder, whether it be Chukwuemeka or someone like Marvelous Nakamba. It's still 3-4-3 for the statisticians. However, my squad utilizes the rotation potential of Pickford and Turner by instead owning Tarkowski and Aurier. I've decided to rotate the defenders instead of the goalkeepers because, for me, I own 4.5 million defenders for their potential attacking returns. I initially had Matty Cash 1 month ago, and it's one of those fullbacks over centre back sort of things. And I've just realized that I absolutely loved Tarkowski's set piece threat. I don't see I know Dwight McNeil's potential injury is a big put off, but I still feel that if Sean Dyche were to win a game, it would be through set pieces rather than one of their forwards coming good. So I'm happy with that because when you rotate, well, I mean, I don't have to go through the rotation of Everton and Forest now, but that's what I'm leaning into because that allows me to have Steele instead of Estupinian. So without owning Estupinian, instead I own Saliba over Gabriel. A lot of people own Gabriel, but people need to remember that at the start of last season, when Martinelli banged, the other defender that profited from Arsenal's corners was Saliba. So this is hopefully not the cat out of the bag moment for me, because that's two of my starting three. The rotation, Saliba, as well as Luke Shaw. This is once again another last-minute change I made because I originally had Ben Chilwell, and I was going to hold him for 8 game weeks without a transfer. But now, with Wolves not having a manager, I'm happily going to own Shaw and then immediately switch to Chilwell for that West Ham game in game week 2. So really, Rob, to answer your whole Salah spreading out the funds, that is one of my solutions. To have Shaw at the beginning, switching to Chilwell, and then for me to reveal my power 5 midfield. Salah, Bruno Fernandes, Martinelli and Kai Havertz, and then James Maddison.
You can't say power. You can't say power 5 and say Kai Havertz.
Well, it's the price structure. It's the price structure because, I mean, that's basically where the money's lost out because the template right now, right, is literally every player in that position, but with 1 million more. People are owning Rashford instead of my Bruno. People are owning Saka instead of Martinelli. People are owning Odegaard instead of Kai Havertz. The tier structure is very obvious, and you would be owning a Bruno, Rashford, Saka, Martinelli draft, or maybe a Saka Odegaard draft, right? And I would be Salah and 1 million lower in every aspect. But I'm happy with that because the plan is after that Chilwell move, I'm saving 1 transfer, and then I'm downgrading the Salah to Jota or Diaz in order to upgrade my Joao Pedro into a Jackson with money left over. I will have about 3 million in the bank, and I can take my time, buy Odegaard when I want, I can buy Saka when I want, I can buy Rashford when I want. It really is up to me, while still owning a decent backline and a midfield that just runs on its own. So that's my strategy, the 3-5-2.
And the forwards are a given. It's Pedro and Haaland because you've got Salah in there, but I wouldn't be confident in Havertz because they played him as a false 9 or the central striker, however you want to label it, against Man City. But they've got a much weaker opposition in Forest, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see Trossard down there and Havertz drop back into midfield. But maybe that's what you want him to do. But I think if I was just to point out just an issue, is like you've already penciled in transfers for game week 2, and that's with anything could happen. You could get an injury. I know we could all get injuries and red cards, but I always feel like the first to start a season with, you want players who are pretty much nailed, and not planning any transfers per se to be like, okay, I have to do this in this game week, and I have to do this in this game week, which you're going to have to do because you've got no money in the bank for this.
I do have no money, but if let's say I do get an injury and I keep Luke Shaw instead of getting Ben Chilwell, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all.
No, but you've got Spurs. You got Spurs away game week 2.
Yeah, and that's just one game week.
Yeah,
they'll have a good fixture after that.
I think a lot of people have a tough game week 2, and then of course there's no bench there. There's Aurier and Cabor, which you don't want to see them ever come onto the pitch. Yeah,
well, no, Cabor comes on game week 6. Yeah.
See, and here I also have defender rotations, but when we look at the quality of your defender rotations because of Salah and what I'll rotate, people I think will see. All right, let's jump over. Oh, does anyone else want to point? Because you guys are all 3 Salahs. I thought it was 2 and 2, but it's not. Does anyone have any points about Lucian's draft that they want to say? Tien?
Well, just a quick one here. I mean, I admire the way you play, Lucian. It's certainly quite different. And I mean, if you chuck this on a tool that can sort of measure the template rating, is probably pretty low. I would have thought. And nothing wrong with that. I mean, you play it your way. But certainly, if things go your well, you'll be laughing all the way, from game week 1 when everyone will be like in the 6 million rank, and you'll be probably in the top 10k by game week 1 if things go your way. But it could also be, easily the other way around, where if the template is going well and you're sort of covering picks in a way, you've got sort of different Arsenal attacks, different Arsenal defense, even the United attack as well. It's kind of like covering in a way, which could work well, but it may also not work well. And it could be in a position where suddenly you got like 3 or 4 fires in the team that you have to sort out by game week 2 or 3. And then of course, Salah money is there, you can sell him, but then that is a fixed position that you have to sell if you want to fix the other position. So that's probably the only potential downside. When things don't go your way, you have to react. It's going to be quite tricky because you're going to be a few transfer behind everyone else.
Yeah, it's like you've got the second choice from teams. You've got Bruno as second choice. You've got Martinelli and Havertz as like second or third or even fourth choice. It's a thing. Because I even thought, no Saka, no Rashford. So bold. I love it. At least it's bold. We're all so different. Ryan, you were going to say something as well about the draft?
Yeah, no, I was about to mention the no Saka, no Rashford, because I was like, ooh, those are not only like good options, but possible captaincy shouts as well, those players that you're going against. So it's very interesting to see that. The Tarkowski, what happens if he's, let's say, not fit? What are you going to do?
Oh, I actually have Keane in my draft right now. That picture's a little bit old. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
but
just
still
Everton.
Everton. But still Everton, yeah. I think is the answer, right? Okay. So let's go for. All right, Ryan. We'll stick with you then. This is your draft. If you want to go through your team, and then we'll rip it to shreds. No, Joe. we'll discuss it after.
Feel free to. No, actually, I don't mind as any feedback that comes. So I've gone to 3-5-2 from 3-4-3. But I've basically gone Onana, Estupinan, Saliba, and Chilwell in defense. I've got Saka, Rashford, Garnacho, Salah, and Martinelli in midfield. And I've got Haaland and Joe Pedro up front. On the bench, I've got Areola, who will become Turner if he does end up switching before the deadline. Then I've got Udogi from Spurs. I've got Osulo. I think he's probably the 4.5 forward who will probably play the most minutes at the moment. And then I've got Kabore, just like everyone else. Now, the problems with this is I had Stones. There's no City defense in this. I had Stones instead of Estupinan before. But then obviously Guardiola got released as a 5 million defender, and I was looking at that and I was like, very interested to see whether he starts or not. So I went from Stones to Stupinen just to give me a few game weeks data in terms of to see whether Guardiola is that City defender of choice, and then I can move Stupinen if I wanted to Man City defender, because I still think Man City defense is probably one of the best defenses that you'll find, even though high upside for points might not be there. The midfield, I guess Martinelli maybe the second best Arsenal option. I'm not really sure on that yet. In terms of minutes as well, and like I do like Trossard if he was to start that number 9 slot, but we're not sure on that. Martinelli could become a Maddison later on, or even a Richarlison, depending on what happens with Harry Kane. So I've left Martinelli in there. Now, obviously, this can change. I do have the option of, like we mentioned, the 6.5s. I could upgrade a Garnacho to a Mitoma and downgrade a Martinelli to an Mbeumo as well. That is a possibility as well if I wanted to do that. But yeah, that's right now. This is the situation. No money in the bank.
Yeah, that's going to ask. I think the big issue here is it looks really good. You just it feels like you're playing with 10 men, because Garnacho for me is just like, he might get some 1-pointers, and basically this is going to become a 4-4-2, and Destiny is going to be in, and Destiny might not always play at left back for Spurs. He's likely, but not necessarily. And then after that, you're looking at a 4.5 million Sheffield United striker who they're trying to replace, and a Luton defender who people are thinking they're going to get thumped pretty much every week.
It could even be 9 men if Joe Pedro also doesn't
gets rotated, especially after game week 5 when Europe comes along. And I think, so just a little point about Pedro. Pedro, people need to realize as well, he could be at a 10. He could be a little bit backwards at a position. He can play as a striker, but they could equally play him out on the wing, and they can play him at a number 10, which makes him a worse option. And if he gets injured or he gets rotated, you're looking at, you'd have 11 players, but you'd be playing 5 at the back, with a 4.5 million and a 4.5 million and a 4 million defender, which
I
could
agree.
be
So
a bit of a problem. But
so my reasoning going for Pedro, now I do agree with the 10, because I think Welbeck is the one who's going to start for Brighton in front over Pedro. So I do think he's going to play in that number 10 spot. The thing was the penalties, and he took a penalty while Gross was on the pitch as well. So that kind of cleared up who is taking Brighton's spends. He is obviously their most expensive signing as well. So I'm all right with him. It's similar to Garnacho, where I think they might not necessarily start every game, but I feel like they will come off as well. And with the additional minutes as well that we're going to see. Before we would have been thinking about 30 minutes, but now you're at least looking at maybe even 40-45 minutes as well, which is potentially possible depending on the opposition they play as well. So anything can happen for attackers, and especially even attackers coming off the bench as well could be a really good option this time, because you're playing against tired defenses. You might actually get to see more returns. I don't know, but that's yet to be seen, but a theory.
Yeah, it's just with the whole Salah flexibility thing, like if Garnacho, the new striker you signed is Højlund, right? And then you've got Sancho, you've got Martial, there's so much he's probably going to come on for 10-15 minutes, but you've got a player in your starting 11 week in, week out who is maybe going to get 10 minutes a game. And you've got nowhere to go. Pedro gets rotated, you've got no other... Well, you could get the Luton striker, and that's it, but you'd be playing him every single week. You've got nowhere to go with a 5 million midfielder that you want to start every week, and you've got nowhere to go for a 5.5 million. So then you're probably going to have to downgrade Chilwell to a 4.5 million to try and get some money somewhere, or Martinelli down to a 6.5 million, or Onana down to a 4.5 million goalkeeper perhaps. But yeah,
this is where Salah might leave eventually, but for the moment I'll have to accept the consequences and
that's it. It feels like the main point you guys have is, if I need to solve a problem, I'll sell Salah. It's not that easy when you're looking at a fiction who's got a good one. I've already said, like, it's going to take you a long time to spread that money out unless you take hits. It's going to take you 2 or 3 game weeks to sell Salah and then spend it across your squad. And in that time, you're going to have game week after game week of having to play 4 million defenders or 4.5 million defenders or strikers. And I just think I'd rather wildcard Salah in if I need him, and then I'll know which cheap players I can rely on, rather than start the season with Salah and difficult fixtures and hope I've chosen the right cheap players that surround him. So if Garnacho starts, you've hit the jackpot. Wonderful. He's a starting player. You've got him 5 million. But if he's out, you're stuck. João Pedro's out, you're stuck. Destiny doesn't start for Spurs, you're stuck. That Sheffield United striker, he doesn't get any minutes. He's a dead asset. The Kabore, Luton are awful. He comes off or on for 5-10 minutes. You wildcard him, or you're taking lots of weeks to do transfers and hits. Any other comments before we jump onto Tien's draft?
Yeah, just
but I think Ryan, you should go first.
And I think Tien was the one.
Yeah, go to
Sorry, yeah, Tien, you go first.
Yeah, sorry. No, I mean, I agree with all the points that you made, Rob. It's probably a little bit, maybe one or two more uncertainties than what I would like in a team. And as I said, it's Nacho and Pedro and even Martinelli. Like, do we know that he's gonna start week in, week out? Potentially, but he's gonna see reduced minute. I would have thought with Havertz and Trossard in the team. So then obviously it takes time for the Salah fund if you sell him to before he can fix those positions. So yeah, potentially that's a downside. But on the upside, sometimes you got to trust yourself. Being a United fan, if you're confident that Garnacho will get at least the first 3 fixtures, he probably hit a jackpot. 5 million midfielder playing, and whenever he's on the pitch, he looks pretty attacking, pretty lively. So yeah, and then you've got time to think about what you want to do in 3 game weeks time. So I think you're going to trust your gut with those picks, really.
Lucian, what were you going to say about the team?
First point on João Pedro. There is potential of João Pedro playing the number 10. But think about it, right? In preseason, penalties aside, think of the key moments João Pedro had in preseason friendlies. Were they as a number 9 running in behind defenses? Absolutely not. João Pedro is a player that gets the ball at his feet. He runs at defenders, he bamboozles them, and he will take shots himself based on that dribbling. So, in that sense, I would love for João Pedro to actually play as a number 10 so that he has the space to showcase his talents, not as a number 9. He's not Simon Adingra. So, in that sense, I absolutely love it that Pedro's the number 10, especially in Brighton's system, because Brighton's system is not about enabling the number 9. They have very poor number 9s, and they don't score typical number 9 type of goals. They actually benefit off the attacking midfielders popping up in different spots and somehow getting high quality chances. And that's how Brighton roll, and I love them for that. Now, second point I need to make is the Garnacho pick, because I think structurally, Rob, what you don't consider here is the fact that all of us with Salah, we will not touch our teams. Like, okay, fine, I've booked a transfer, I will hold my hand up, but it's optional, right? The Shaw, the Chilwell thing. I look at Ryan's draft, and he will not touch that for 2 weeks, minimum. He will not touch that. He can use whatever free transfers he has on fires, but, in the ideal case when nothing happens, and he has no fires or injuries, and even if João Pedro comes on as a sub in the first game week, he will not touch it. Because João Pedro is in there for exactly 3 weeks. Garnacho is in there for exactly 3 weeks. So he will have 1 leeway transfer, and he will have 2 free transfers and perhaps a -4 to actually change Salah and 2 potential problems around in 1 game week. So this is where I feel the power of the 2 free transfers plus -4 really comes into play, because in 1 game week you can change 3 attackers and you will look just as good as the other template player with only a cost of -4. I think that is a very sound, tried and trusted strategy that keeps you up with the template in 1 single game week.
I will say, you say he won't have to touch it for 2 weeks, but when we get onto my draft later, I don't have to touch mine for 8 weeks. And no hits as well. Unless, we can't take into account, say, there's 10 injuries. I mean, nothing I can do about that. But yeah, you're right. He might have to touch it for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, but that could force an early wild card, which could be an issue. But we'll have to just wait till the season starts. So let's go on to Tien's draft, who is a 3-4-3, something which Ryan ditched. So Tien, how are you feeling about this? Go through your team.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see that, you know, three of us have Salah, but our teams are completely different. And it's pure accident, right? We didn't even discuss the teams at all. We just like, yep, this is the draft, and we're gonna talk about. But anyway, the team is Pickford in goal, Gabriel, Estupinian, and Chilwell in defense. So pretty template there. I got Saka, Salah, and Bumo, and Bruno Fernandes in midfield. And up front, I got Haaland, João Pedro, and Watkins. On the bench, I've got Turner, Baldock, Kabore, and Nakamba. So as you said, it's a 3-4-3 setup. Now, hopefully, finger crossed, you know, nothing happened like injuries or anything. As Lucien said, I have no plan to touch this team until at least game week 3 with 2 free transfers. The Watkins pick is there. Now, obviously, you know, if you look at that, it's a very easy switch from Watkins to Martinelli because they're the same price. So it'll be Watkins and a 4.5 midfielder, or a Martinelli and a 4.5 forward, and then you switch to 3-5-2. The reason why I go with Watkins is because if you look at that, most of the players in the starting 11 are nail starters, in my opinion, 90 minutes, except for potentially João Pedro, the only one that I can see that probably won't be playing 90 minutes. So that's the key for me, because then you know, obviously, you know, finger crossed, none of them get injured because, you know, you can't control that. But I won't have fire to deal with. And then depending on who emerges in the first couple of game weeks, I can decide what to do from game week 3, whether I sell Salah or not. Now, unlike the 3-5-2 or the 4-4-2 formation with Salah that I've seen quite popular and with you too as well, you only have Haaland and João Pedro up front. And if Watkins start off firing, what are you going to do? Now, obviously, you can upgrade to Watkins, but then you either have to sell Salah or you sell one of the other midfielders. So I'm making my bet that Watkins is there to stay, or at least until probably the first wild card. I don't mind he's a couple of tough fixtures, because I trust that he can still get the returns regardless of the fixture. So then João Pedro, if he becomes a problem and Salah can sacrifice, then Salah, João Pedro can become a Jackson and any sort of, you know, 8 or 9 million midfielder that I want. And I'm looking for, you know, the new emerging midfielders. I'm not going to go back to like a Rashford or a Martinelli. I'm going to go ahead and go for Spurs or Chelsea or whatever that may emerge in the next few weeks. And that is me trying to sort of cover all the bases, because I'm not tripling up in any team, right? There's no tripling up in Arsenal or United. There's no double up United attack. There's only one City there. So obviously there's a lot of key players that I don't have, but you can't have everyone. That's a problem. So I'm just going to have to take the risk. No Rashford, but hopefully Fernandes can cover him. No Martinelli, but then I'm hoping Watkins can do the job. And then I reassess after a couple of weeks. And there's multiple ways that I can go from here. So can't say that this will be the game week 1 team, but I'm pretty happy with it.
If I had I've got a Salah draft. I think this. I'm not playing favorites here, but I think this is the best one because you've got all these players are nailed. I don't. If mine would just have some real slight tweaks, so I wouldn't go 5.5 with Chilwell on this. I'd probably go 4.5. Rotate one of my bench defenders. Maybe put Colwell in there and bench him for week 1, and probably do Bruno to Rashford, and then I'd make the decisions between Watkins and Martinelli. But you've got like nothing on the bench, which is fine. You've got Baldock, who's probably going to... Your bench will play. You don't want them on, but I think what you've done really well here is they are all nailed. I would say they're nailed players. You said it yourself. Pedro might be in and out, might only come on, might only do 70 minutes here and there, but the rest, 10 of your 11 players, if they don't start like every game week, I'd be shocked. Like, if I see any of those players on a bench for a week, I'd be really surprised. And that's why Bruno's even a good choice, because Rashford might only do 70 minutes. And Garnacho, Ryan's man, might come on for the last 20. But you've got Bruno, who's going to start like every single game. Like, I just think this as a draft, the only question I would be answering, which is what you said yourself, is do you go for 8 million Watkins or 8 million Martinelli? But this structure I think is great because I've said it. Your entire bench is cheap as hell, but they all play. They will all be nailed for their own team. So you've got like a whole squad of nailed players. So even if you go 3 deep into your bench, you're probably still going to get 2 points. But your players are absolutely rock solid nailed on. And my Salah draft is not that much different. Same sort of price points. I would just go cheaper in defense. Touch Bruno up a little bit to Rashford because I think he's the bigger threat. But then after that, it's maybe I'd put the 0.5 million on a better bench player like a Palace defender or something instead of a Luton one. But aside from that, I think it's a great draft. If I was doing Salah, mine looks like this bar. Well, the price points would be the same except a cheaper defender, and I'd just have to choose between 3 strikers or 5 mids. Ryan, any things that you want to say about Tien's draft?
I like it. It's just the Bruno versus Rashford. I feel like it's not the problem with me is I think it's not covering United attack because I think Rashford's ceiling is significantly higher compared to Bruno's, and we've seen it in preseason where Bruno can like go where he has access to go anywhere he wants, and that could be detrimental to FPL as well because he might not always get attacking returns. He could be the one assisting the assister at times. So if you can make that 0.5 to go up to Rashford if possible, then that makes it really stronger. Watkins could be a really good shout. Also, it helps as a placeholder to move to Gabriel Jesus if you wanted to later on if he does come back. The one thing is Mbeumo. If he's not fit, what's the plan there?
Yeah, any of the other 6.5 we talked about earlier, Mitoma, Eze, Gabi, if I want to go a bit punty. So yeah, it's and you can see like it's about trying to cover each of those sort of teams that have good fixtures to start with. Like Brentford. If I had a Witzer, for example, instead of João Pedro, then I probably would go Mitoma instead. But because I've got João Pedro to cover Mitoma, then I go Mbeumo. So you can see that just try to spread the risk out a little bit. And yes, I agree completely that not having Rashford is a risk, and I wish that I could get the 0.5 from someone. If someone got some spare change in the bank that could lend me, I'll love it. But at the moment, I can't see where I can get the fund from. I see the idea of not having Chilwell, but then I don't want to book in transfer because I know that I will probably want at least two Chelsea from game week 3. So having one there save me more transfer in the very near future. And the point that as you said, Rob, the reason why I picked most of the nail players is because I don't want to deal with fires. I wanted to use the fun, if I need to sell Salah, to get ahead of the game rather than to fix problems in my team. So that's the idea behind it. I mean, it's definitely not perfect. There's a lot of good drafts out there without Salah, and I'm jealous of those picks. I think I'm going to go with Salah.
Lucian, any points about Tien's draft?
Watkins to Madison, funds you Bruno to Rashford.
What did he say?
Yeah, you go.
Watkins to Madison, funds you Bruno to Rashford.
Watkins to Madison, yeah, gives you Bruno.
That's
352.
Yeah, so that is a good point. That is a good point. Now and I mean, it could be that, or could be Foden, right? Because that kind of idea is certainly viable.
He's just changing it now. He's just doing it now.
It's more of that.
Yeah, no.
Watkins has Europe, you see, and Madison does not have Europe. He's a 90-minute player, and he's arguably playing for a team that is on the same strength, if not more powerful than Villa.
Yes, but my thing is that I want to see how Spurs play first, especially without Kane, because I might want Richarlison instead. And if Richarlison is the best option from game week 3, well, a Watkins swap around with Richarlison and Jackson, for example, is, then I don't have to sell Salah. So do you see what I mean? I'm trying to cover the price point as well, so that it's always easy to come down.
What you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, it's always easy to come down from Watkins to Jackson and not having that option.
You're buying yourself 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then you can make the moves that you really know you want.
Yeah, and I know that Salah is there as my sort of safety net, that I can sell him and get anyone I like. But without selling Salah, I still have options. That's the main idea of having those sort of structure and price point. And yes, no Rashford, but I don't know. Well, like how much can he hurt me in like 2 or 3 weeks?
Well, his rank can, because he's 47% owned.
Yeah, but I mean,
is Bruno owned?
He's in the 20s. I'll have to just double check.
yeah, no.
Bruno Fernandes is 27. It's gone up. It's gone up since you last checked. It's 27% now.
Yeah, the thing is, like, yes, of course he can hurt me, but he's not gonna hurt me like when I went without Haaland. He's like 180% EO. So Rashford is not gonna be 100%, more than 100%, right? It's gonna be 90% or 80%, which is fine. I'm willing to take that risk, and it's a short-term risk. I'm not gonna say I'm going with Rashford the whole season, right? If he's going on fire in the first couple of weeks, I'm happy to readjust. I'm happy to admit that, yep, I've made a mistake, fix it, no problem. 2 or 3 game weeks, anything can happen. Just try to minimize the risk and go with what you can, because everyone got 100 million. It's not unlimited fun.
Yeah,
you can't have everyone. Anyway,
all right.
Let's see your non-Salah draft.
No, I don't think I have the time or energy to go through the whole reason about bench boosting, but I'm going to go through the team. And I've retweeted a thread that I posted before, and I'm going to copy it into the live stream for people to check out later about why I like bench boosting game week 1. I did it last season, and it was the wrong decision because I didn't really take into account the additional wildcard we all got for the World Cup and how many ridiculous amount of double game weeks we ended up having at the end of the season. But first, I'll just go through the team that I'll be starting with. So it's Pickford in goal, Chilwell, Saliba, Estupiñán. Wow, there you go. That's original at the back. That's template City, but it's template for a reason. And I've been Saliba as well the whole time over Gabriel, because I think I I think his chances of getting more points with bonus is higher than Gabriel's getting the occasional goal. Saliba was injured for a bit of last season as well, so that's why he's behind him. Going into midfield, Rashford, Martinelli, Saka, Maddison, and Matoma. I do want to also say that I do have $1 million. I do have $1 million in the bank as well, so I could go Maddison to an 8.5 or an 8 million. I could go Matoma to a 7.5. I have money to play with as well. Up front, Haaland and Jackson. On the bench, I've got Johnston, Anderson, both at Palace, Baldock, and Yao Pedro. Baldock could go up to a Varane. The only reason I'm thinking I'm not doing that is I will end up transferring Varane out, or Martinez at Manchester United, because I think there's a big clean sheet opportunity for Manchester United. So the bench boost, there's a whole theory behind it, and it's from a post I've done before. The bench boost itself, the idea is I think it's one of the worst, the most overrated chips that affects people's wildcards or transfers or hits. People will make specific transfers for one single game week of bench boosting players that they're not even wanting to have. And if you do it just before a wildcard, that's fine. You can wildcard out of it. But then you've still set up transfers and moves for a chip where your player isn't good that you're going to use on the bench, and it's a player that you probably don't want before or after the bench boost itself. And it's a waste of money. If I use it in game week 1 with the fixtures, so Palace at Sheffield United is a fantastic fixture. Pedro against Luton is a fantastic fixture. Baldock at Palace at home isn't very good. I understand that. I could use, if I wanted to use just one transfer for this bench boost, it would be Varane instead of Baldock to try and get some more points. But if I want to do this bench boost with no effect on my team whatsoever, then it would look like this. And I think that these players with these fixtures that I feel very, very confident will play in these great fixtures that they have, and then the rest of the season, every single move, every single strategy, every single thing that I do focuses on my 11. And during a double game week, I will be able to choose the best players in my 11, whereas people who are bench boosting will put some of their money onto their bench to make their bench boost worthwhile. You know, people aren't going to bench boost with a non-playing 4.5 million forward. So that means at some point in this season, so you guys now, if we just have a look, if you'd have to rearrange it. So if you're going to bench boost with Salah, if I want Salah later in the season, I'm all right. I don't need a bench. But at some point, you guys are going to have to put people on your bench for you to bench boost. You're going to have to do so. It might be after this wild card. It might be after your second wild card. But the bench boost, it will have some effect on your teams. It will have no effect on mine. So when it comes to a double game week, if it's a really good one, it's Man United or Man City or Liverpool, I can put them in my starting 11 and have the strongest, best starting 11. I will have to leave no penny spared on my bench for the sake of a bench boost chip. Net-wise, Sir Tal has said it before in the past. Sir Tal P. Bilal, he's the big analyst and does a lot of the data and models and stuff. He said before as well that it's basically like a net zero. I used a bench boost first game week last season. It was wrong. I think it's the right move. And even now, and I've said this weeks ago, and I think it was yesterday, Ben Crellin himself has literally said that game week 1 could literally be the best time to bench boost. And this is something that I discussed last season. I've copied and pasted the thread for people to really go into the reasons why I think a game week 1 bench boost is the best. The key for me this time, the original plan, you have to bench boost in game week 1 and wildcard in game week 2. The thing that's really pulling me to bench boost game week 1 this season, I don't even have to wildcard. I don't have to touch my team. So people might say, oh, you've got Chilwell, but Chilwell going down the left side, yeah, he might not get a clean sheet, but a lot of people are going to be starting Chilwell this game week. He's a template pick right now, him or James, right? So it's not the worst to start. So most people have got this defense anyway. It doesn't bother me that I'm bench boosting him. I just feel like this is the best time to do it, and I don't have to leave any money on my bench again in the future. I just think it's the best time to do it because you don't have to wildcard out of it. I've still got $1 million in the bank, so I can improve Pedro to Alvarez. Let's say I get that news if I want, or I can downgrade somewhere. I've still got $1 million to play with, completely flexible, and I can still get to Salah if I desperately need to in a couple of moves. So that's some of the points. My baby here distracted me for a moment as she stole the controllers. So yeah, just the thing that sold it for me is I don't need to wildcard out of it. I have no planned moves. So if you force me to play this team for 8 game weeks, I'm happy because Anderson can come off the bench and Johnson can come off the bench at any time for when Estupiñán has difficult fixtures, when Arsenal have got, I think, Spurs and United in the first 8, and Chilwell only has the first game week, which is difficult, and he stays in the team for the rest of the time. So, yeah. That's the thing that sold it.
I don't mind it at all.
I don't have to. That's why I sold it. I don't have to wildcard out of it. If I had to wildcard in game week 2, I'd have to think twice again about it because people will say, "Oh, you're wasting it." But the fact that you can choose a fantastic squad if you don't have Salah, and my bench every week, I don't have to worry about a 4 million defender coming on. I'll have a Palace defender or a Brighton striker coming on to one of my players. And if you look at the 11 I've got, they're all nailed. Martinelli, potential question mark. I've got $1 million. I can make him Son. I can make him Richarlison. I can make him Erdegaard. I can do whatever I want with Martinelli if he's not nailed. So my team's nailed, and if they're not, I'm happy if one of my bench players comes on the pitch. Go on, Tien, you were going to say first?
Yeah, no. I think like last year we had a chat before game week 1, and the biggest reason why I argue against your bench plan then was to wildcard game week 2, which I think you went ahead anyway, and I think that probably was the main downside of doing it, because you kind of like locked in and you wildcard when there's very little information. But I'm looking at this. I can't argue against it too much. You could get a decent bench boost. Maybe not the highest score that it could get, but probably decent enough. And you don't have to worry about the team, and you don't have to wildcard it straight away. And the team is decent, so I like it.
Yes.
And just want to make the point before anyone else jump in is that I love the fact that the 4 of our drafts, none of them look like the template team on Twitter at the moment.
They're all completely different from each other. Three
Very
of you guys
different from each other, and different from the rest.
You 3 all have Salah. You 3-4-3, 3-5-2. We've got one with Garnacho. We've got one that has the second option, arguably second option from every club in Lucy, and I think it's great to see. And this is again why I think this is FPL IQ is a great team together, because you can't get any sort of different sort of plans or strategies in this. I just think I really just push home the fact that if you've got a bench boost, it will affect your transfers or wildcard at some point. If let's say, I don't know, there's a double game week coming in game week 30 and you're wildcarding game week 29, you will affect that wildcard decision at some form. You'll have to put money somewhere on the bench unless you don't care about a bench boost chip and you just play a 4 million defender and hope they have a double game week. But Ryan, any points?
Can I just make one more argument? Can I just make one more argument before Ryan and Lucien come in? Like, one thing that I personally, the way I feel and the way I play it, about playing it now is, imagine like, if you're racing and you got sort of like that knocks button, it's like you press it at the start. Whereas I would prefer to press it at the end. So what happened is, yes, you may get off, to a great start because, you 10 or 12 points ahead of everyone else because of your bench boost, right? But then it will be harder to maintain from there. Whereas if I organically try to play my game and try to gain rank slowly, and then I press that button at the end to get that extra boost, because that's the name, right? It's the boost to get a good finish. I mean, it could be useless, if I'm like 500,000 rank in game week 37, like, well, the bench was gonna help me then, right? But I'm waiting for that moment that, if I'm in a decent position at the end, that will help me, because up to that point, I've been trying to organically improve my rank rather than have a very good start, but then slowly you will drift down, and then you lose again those who save the chip to the end as well. And you know that it will happen, regardless of what you said about ruining the team and all that sort of stuff. But it will happen because when the time that the majority plays a bench, you will be behind, no matter what. So that's the thing, that it's just the way I think about it and the way I feel about it. It's not about the actual team itself or the actual return that you get from the chip itself. It's just the mindset, the psychology of it.
Yeah,
Anyway, over to you guys.
Just the short counter to that is, I'm bench boosting knowing exactly which teams, which players, which fixtures. You're saving for a potential boost with a team and players you'll have no idea until it gets closer to the time. And
I've been playing for 10 years, so I know what I'm into.
Yeah.
So it's not completely blind, but yeah, anyway, you got the point.
Ryan?
I like it, and I think it's made better because of the fact that we have all these enablers right now. That kind of, which is why you see us also going on Salah Draft, because it's all these enablers that have popped up that have allowed for these kind of options to appear. Now the thing with the bench boost chip is I hate it in general, because it's like one of the worst chips in terms of you tailor your like squad to prepare yourself for the bench boost. And I did that last season, and like I was almost about to get in a double game week a single digit bench boost score. And if not for Kepa keeping a clean sheet in the second game, I would have had a single digit bench boost. And I mean, you can never tell if a bench boost is going to be good or not in a single game week. You kind of have to see, it's compared to the triple captain and the free hit, where in 1 week you can tell if it was a success or not. The others, you need to look at it over a set number of game weeks and see what you're missing out on. Whether you're now, that could be you in terms of like now you're playing it, and then you don't have to think about moves that would affect in the future. So you can probably, let's say, say you're playing it more optimal after as well, because you're getting in the best 11 players week in, week out without having to worry about the bench. Now, I'm a bit of a sucker for doubles, so I'll kind of wait and see for that double game. We can try and get the best possible, maybe 12, 13 players if possible. But then even then, that's not going to guarantee me that my bench or even my starting 11 will, in a double game week, that both of them will play both games. That's just not a guarantee. They might play one game and then get rotated the second game. We've seen that before as well. So I think it's a chip that you play based on when you feel your squad is at the best at. And even then, you might not get it, but it is what it is. I feel like just it's one of those chips where you like hope for the best, and after that, it is you just let variance take over.
So this could be a question that people can answer as well, but we're also expecting only a couple of double game weeks, right? So if I was to ask you, Ryan, what do you think is better for you? A bench boost with a bench of like 4.5 million players, or a triple captain chip on Haaland in a double game week?
A triple captain chip, definitely.
And if there's only one double game week this entire season, or two, well, there shouldn't be that many this season. That's what they've already said. That's why Brent Krellin himself came out and said about it being not as many doubles this week. If there's only like one proper double game week and you're going to use a bench boost on it, that's when I'm going to use my triple captaincy on a Salah or a Haaland. Or whereas you're going to have to make the decision whether or not to bench boost or to triple captain, because there's only going to be what did he say about bench boost? Maybe only game week 37 might be the only double game week with 11 fixtures this season.
It's the biggest one. It's gonna be the biggest one.
And you're not
There will
gonna,
be
you're not,
smaller one.
yeah, you're not gonna. There
Yeah,
could be a
no,
mini
so-
one.
Yeah, so there's one thing that we know for now. We know that Luton and Burnley
City.
will have an extra game.
Yeah.
Now, what's about those two teams? Cheap options.
Well, just yeah, we did just
So
bench
if-
boost them.
Yeah, so if let's say if we know later on, sort of in around sort of game week 8 and 10, right? That we know that it might go into game week 18 or something. And it's about wildcard time. So it's like, oh, I'm gonna load up with Luton and Burnley. They just sit on the bench until our bench boost.
Yeah,
They're not gonna affect your plan either, but at that time you know a lot more information. Because now, yes, you know, you may think that they nail, but what if they're not?
well,
Then you lose a player.
no, because you'd
So-
have to have a 4.5 million goalkeeper, and you'd have to have 3 playing players from there. So you would need to spend at least 5.5 million on a striker, because that's how much their strikers are.
Yeah, but you're doing it right now, right? So it's no difference.
But my 5.5 million is Pedro at home. I would prefer these guys in these fixtures than a Burnley and Luton bench that you've wildcarded into that you'll have to keep until the end of the season.
Not the end of the season. Not, you know, if we know that their double game weeks are gonna be in like game week 20, and you're gonna wildcard in around,
After that.
you know, 10 or 12, and then you've got a second wildcard after that as well.
So you'd
So, you know,
hold them for
there's
15 game weeks
No, maybe 5.
between the
10.
two wildcard. Yeah, 5 to 10 game weeks
Yeah.
of having to have
Yeah.
a Burnley and Luton bench.
But you probably have them anyway for your bench, right? So yeah, like a lot of things can happen, and I'm willing to wait.
Yeah. But if
more
there's
information.
if there's
Anyway.
one big double, then that's when I'm going to play my triple captain. You're not going to wild card all the way at game week 37 because that's far too late in my opinion.
We know that we're gonna play it's the first double game week that Haaland play. Anyway, that could be as early as 2021, I think. They will be away for the
World Cup, Club
World
World Cup.
Cup. Yeah, the Club World Cup.
Mm.
So they will have a double pretty soon after that, which, you know, is probably the moment you activate the triple captainship.
Oh, that could be the bench
So then-
boost time and save the triple for game week 37.
But I'm not gonna bench put Witcher City
No.
players because
Yeah.
they're too expensive for the bench.
True.
But anyway, Lucian.
Lucian, final thoughts then on the bench boost draft? No Salah.
Bench boost is a bit tricky because the way we properly evaluate a bench boost, first and foremost, is to actually pick your best 11 players, and then you put the worst 4 on the bench. Because I've had bench boosts where I put like TAA and Haaland and whoever on the bench, right, without captaining whoever. And you know, the bench boost score looks fantastic, right? For me, bench boosting, when you guys talk about who you potentially have on the bench, so what if you have a 4.5 million player? If he is going to play against Leicester and Leeds at home, and he gets 8 points times 2, that's golden. I mean, call it a preference, call it a fetish. I live for double game weeks and the planning leading up to it. Ryan's already said he's hated it so much and it's stressful and whatever. I have the complete opposite view. I really live for those moments because I know that planning for those moments, I'm an absolute nerd here. And I will happily spend and invest any sort of energy debating with Pras or whoever, just you know, going into each proper scenario of what double game weeks potentially look like. I think, Rob, your merits on the number of double game weeks last season were very justified because there were an absurd number of blank game weeks due to the Queen's passing and whatever. This time around, assuming there are a normal number of blank game weeks, I've looked through the whole point about Ben Crellin saying that double game week 37 is the only possible big double game week. But he also justified it saying that there are 3 other potential avenues where you get mini double game weeks, such as a 31 and a 34 and whatever it is. So I think for me, my argument, or at least the thing that I want to contribute to the bench boost discussion, is the concept of double game weeks, because some of us view double game weeks as a trap. You can get like 2 single pointers, right? As Ryan said last season, and you have every risk of that happening, especially if you pick 4.5 million players for the sake of it, right? But the idea of using a bench boost late into the season is that you have built up massive value through your transfers, and you're operating on a 104 million budget rather than a 100 million budget. Secondly, I do feel that I like your squad, but I don't love it. I don't know if Saka and Martinelli are going to be the actual best players in that Arsenal attack. I don't know if Bruno Fernandes or Rashford are actually going to both bang against Wolves. I don't. There are so many unknowns that I feel are not the 120% spearhead of each individual side, even though the fixtures look good. Even with Brighton, even if I have Mitoma in there, you're just putting him in there with the risk of March or Gross or whoever taking points away from that Luton game. There's just no guarantee. For us, without a bench boost, if our game week plans turn sour, Mitoma blanks, fine. So be it. We're happy moving on with game week 3, but you've lost that bench boost potential, especially if Joao Pedro blanks in game week 1. Whereas most of us, when we play our bench boost later in the season, right, the concept of double chance, you have like 2 strikes at the dartboard to hit bullseye instead of just 1. And that sets you up, right, for a potential of 10 points on the bench per player, because you know that they bang in one game and they just blank in the other, whatever. It's still a 40-point bench boost, and that is what we all strive for. You cannot do that in game week 1. You just cannot, because you don't have the budget. And even if you have good fixtures, you're not going to get 4 times 10. You will never ever find a set of players that will get 4 times 10 on your bench. With a double game week, very, very possible. I would argue that I'm even greedier. I want 4 times 20 points on my bench because I'm that sort of player. And with my bench boost last season, I got 200 points in total in that game week. Yeah. But there were some seasons, because I played for 17 seasons, you know, and there were some game weeks where Watkins got a red card in the first game week of the double. Fine. I take the -1 and I go. I'm perfectly happy with that. I've bench boosted in 37, 34, 31 in once. I did it. So it's all different. I wish I could evaluate each of them modularly, but I think it just comes down to preference and playstyle. And Rob made a very good point about how the prep leading up to the bench boost is incredibly stressful, because there are so many fires already that potentially pop up between 31 and 37, right? And then you still have to plan for a bench boost. You will take hits. I love taking hits, so I'm cool with that. Yeah, so it really is a matter of playstyle. Yeah. So just as a final point to conclude, I've only got one thing to conclude. I've only got one thing to criticize about that draft. I hate seeing good attackers on the bench that will never come on. I hate it. I would rather have 3 to 4 non-starters, and then I have a fantastic first sub that will come on for a non-player. Like if Joao Pedro were on the bench, and then I would have like a Foden, a Kai, and who else is at risk? A Trossard or something like that. You know, 3 players, one of them potentially getting 0 minutes, and then Joao Pedro comes on. Fantastic. Rob, you have 7 attackers that will never go to the bench. Joao Pedro will sit there with 8 points, and you'd be like, oh, what do I do? Yeah. You'll never come across that.
This is why I could go Matoma to Edsay for game week 1, and I still got a Brighton attacker, and then game week 2 I bench Edsay against Arsenal, and Pedro comes on and play 3-4-3.
That I would say yes, fantastic. Do that.
Yeah. Tien, before I counter just 2 points that Lucian said, what were you gonna mention?
No, just want to add on the bench boost point as well. I think Lucian is very, very right when he say, you know, later in the season you got 105 million to play with. You can do a lot more with your bench boost. Now, there's one more strategy that I saw someone propose a couple of years back, and I kind of tried it sort of halfway, but instead of wildcarding into a bench boost like most people do, you know, leading up to a double game week, and then use that to set up the bench boost, and it may not be the best way to use the wild card, and I agree with that. Setting up with transfers is difficult, as I said, because fires come up, players get injured, and all that. But there's one potentially viable strategy: is actually using bench boost as a currency for another wildcard. So let me explain. So for example, if for whatever reason you've already used a wildcard, right, the second wildcard, for example, early on in the second half, and then you've got all these sort of double and blanks to navigate without the wildcard. Then you've got the bench boost in place. Then instead of just using the bench boost to get the bench boost gain, you make the transfer in a way that sort of optimize your team. Then in the right game week, where you take a lot of hits to sort of restructure or fix the team, a major surgery for the team, you play the bench boost because it just happened to fall on a week where a couple of good bench players play a double game week or whatever, that pay for your bench boost with a 12-point hit. And when you got a 12-point hit, it's a major surgery, right? Basically, it's almost like a wild card. And then hoping that you get about the same point or maybe even more for the bench boost. So you're not gaining on the bench boost itself, but it pay for you to have another wild card in a way. That is obviously depending a lot on many factors going your way in terms of fixtures and double and blank and all that falling into place. But it's certainly a viable strategy. And for that reason, I want to just save it for that potential scenario.
Okay, so I'll just go for that point first. So your point is you can do like a 12-point hit, and then when you bench boost at some point, that pays for the hit, right? But I've still used my bench boost to get the points. So whatever points I get from my bench boost, I know it's only one game week, but what the argument I'm going to make in a minute is the quality of my bench compared to what you guys will bench boost potentially is higher. So I think my bench boost ceiling is quite high for the fixtures I've chosen. So let's say I get 10 points from this bench boost, then the hits that you're talking about getting in the future that you'll get returned from your bench boost, I've already got my 10 points now. So it's a 38 game week season, right? So just because you do a -12 and then a few weeks later you do a bench boost and say, oh, that's paid for it, I still have used my bench boost chip. I still have got whatever points I've got from my chip. It's just that you've used it in a double and I've not. So you're not getting any advantage over me for using it because I still use it. It's not taken away from me. I just got to hope that my single game week better players are better than your potentially less quality double game week players. Going on to the points, the key points that you both made were we'll have maybe 103 million or something by that point. Yeah, but the prices go up for the budget. However, the players that you want, they're the ones whose prices have gone up. And then the players that you don't want have gone down. And if you've
Not
got
the cheap end player.
But then, so that brings on to the second point. The quality that you're bringing in for your bench boost is low because you're going to... And remember, the value, you don't get 100% of your value from your team. If you've got a player that's gone up 0.5 million, you don't get 0.5 million to sell. So you'll have to go lower than what you've got. So your budget might say you've got 103 million, but one, the players that are quality that you would like to have, they've gone up in price. And two, the players that you're selling to get to some bench boost players are not necessarily the value that you actually get, because they might be a 6.8 Matoma, but you're not getting 6.8 million for him. So therefore that 103 million is more like 102.7. And if you do that a few times, then... So I know you're saying that your budget's higher.
But that's not how we play. The moment we know that Mitoma has multiple blanks, you buy him before the doubles even appear. We don't wildcard a Mitoma in just before a bench boost because of that single double. We have him like multiple doubles before. Like whenever Mitoma... Like, all these things about Mitoma and the players going up in value is a valid point, but we never pick them up at the highest point. Never. we usually have these players already in tow before all these, like the moment the blanks happen, you just wait for the blanks to finish and you buy Mitoma at that point, which is why Mitoma was such a valuable player for us, because he started at 5 million, and even if you were slightly late and you bought him at 5.3, right, you still keep that value, right, and you just run him through whatever tough fixtures, through whatever thick and thin, and by the time you wouldn't be playing a wildcard to bring in a Mitoma, you'd be using it to bring in all the underpriced players from Brighton, such as Lewis Dunk or Veltman or something like that, which arguably I would say have much higher quality compared to the single game week fixtures.
I was about selling Matoma, not bringing him in. And you're saying, like, yeah, he started at 5 million and then you want him at 5.3. That means you've paid 0.3 more. So your budget has gone lower. And again, you're saying about the wild card, that circles back to one of my original points of you're having a bench boost affect one of your 2 wild cards. I will have 2 full wild cards to do whatever I want to do with it. You will have one of your wild cards, by playing it that way, must be affected by the bench boost, despite it only being for 1 week. And the other point you said about 2 bites at the cherry, two throws at the dartboard, I completely agree with that. But again, that just comes back to you're having 2 bites of a cherry. I've chosen specific game week 1 with 1 fixture, but I've chosen players that I believe can get something from a game. The ones that you're going to be bench boosting might have 2 bites at a cherry, but the players that, if you do an honest bench boost, because you said you might put Trent on your bench, right, to look like you're having a good bench boost. This for me is an honest bench boost. I'm not realistically going to bench Chilwell because I think he can do so. But even if you say, okay, no, start Anderson and Johnson, okay, Pickford at home to Fulham, Chilwell at home to Liverpool. Oh, you'd start Pedro, okay, fine, Jackson at home to Liverpool. However you want to rearrange my setup, the players I bench boost, I believe in. And I just feel like I'd rather have the quality I've got now for 1, rather than having a wild card affected by bench boost players, and then saying like, oh, they've got 2 bites at the cherry, but it's Marvelous Nakamba for Luton as one of my players. Or it's Turner in goal for Forest. You know, Turner could play 2 games in a double game week and concede 4 goals in one game and 3 goals in another, and he finishes a double game week with 2 points. And my single game week goalkeeper could go and get a clean sheet and 2 bonus. I just think taking the bench boost out of the equation, but still using it to what I feel is effective with players that I actually believe in, not players that I'm stuck with. And then I'm, like I said, I don't have to touch this team for 8 weeks. If I change Baldock to a 4.5 million or a 5 million like a Varane, I don't have to change any of these players for 8 to 10 until a wild card. So the bench boost has no effect on my team whatsoever, or on any of my other chips whatsoever. But I'm still going to get some points, unless for some reason, you know, Anderson gets injured and doesn't play, and that's football. I can't predict that. I'm not going to kick myself if Johnson gets injured in the warm-up before the game, because he would have been injured for both games in a double game week anyway, right? So it wouldn't have mattered. But if these players play, I strongly believe in these guys more than having to affect a wild card and use a bench boost in a double game week using players from Burnley or Luton or Sheffield United. Ironically, I've got Baldock in there, but that's just, I can change him if I want. Oh.
I will add, now we've been talking about the bench boost as like from a squad structure / overall rank kind of perspective, but one advantage I think that I've noticed, like people discuss a lot later, when it gets to the end of the season, it's not only rank we're chasing, we're also chasing mini leagues and whatnot. And that's where I guess the bench boost could come into effect, where you have that edge over a mini league rival, or even in a head-to-head league where you're maybe in like the semis or final of a head-to-head, and you have this bench boost chip on top of your rival, where it could also be for like various other competitions that people. So it's a game within a game as well. for managers, some managers. So those are that. And I've had those questions that have come up last year and year before once my stream where managers just come like, we're trying to win mini leagues. What can we do? Then we look at chips and what the chips they have and try and find an edge. And I guess that's where that bench boost can be an edge.
All right, great. I think, of course, just as a disclaimer, these could all change. I might turn off the bench boost, or, you know, Ryan might go,
now,
no,
Rob.
no, I can't. I will bench boost. But some of these, so I said earlier, you know, a key change I might do is Etsy in for Matoma, and then I can just sub them in a game week. But in terms of, I just want to say, because people always like to just say, oh, you know, you said you were going to start Jackson, but then I get early team news and Alvarez starts and I switch that. People are going to be, you know, all over Twitter saying, oh, you've said you're starting Jackson. So of course we still have a whole day. There could be, so I've got Madison right now. If Kane goes, I could go Madison to Bruno Fernandez, which is because I've got Madison. I think he's fantastic, but I got him in. One of the reasons was he's setting up world-class Harry Kane. So apart from a few changes, I'm still pretty set on the bench boost. I think I've made my feelings pretty clear about it. But any final points before you guys say goodbye to everyone? Any final thoughts?
I think you should play the bench boost in game week 1, and you should laugh at us as we make our transfers later in the season to adjust to our bench boost. You should really make it like hammer it home and make sure you make us like squirm as much as we can, especially if we make a bad decision.
Clip
do that.
all of this. Yep.
Yeah, we need you to like keep us in check as well, so that we can justify our bench boost to you.
So in game week 37, when you guys are bench boosting the big double and you've had to wild card in game week 30, and I'm sat there with a strong 11, and you're like, oh, I need to put 2 million extra on my bench, and that's 2 million that's in my starting 11.
Yep.
That'll do.
No, I just one final word. Like, yeah. So last season, I was a lot less convinced about your game week 1 bench boost
Because of the wild card, which is exactly
because of the wild card game week 2. Whereas this season, I look at that team, I look at what he's saying, and I think go for it. There's not much. It's just not for me because the way I play it, but it's not about the strategy itself. Like, it's very sound. So good luck, and we'll see who'll be laughing, because at the end of the day, we can't control the outcome.
No,
and whether it's 10 points, 20 points, 30 points on a bench boost, it's nothing in the whole scheme of things. You know, the 2,000 plus season, that's a plus point season. Like, that's 20 point extra is really nothing.
And Ryan said it himself. Is, you know, you can have a double game week with 20 million on your bench and end up with 6 points. You can bench boost Makamba, Kabore at Luton, and a 4.5 million Sheffield United striker in a single game week, and they could get you 25 points, right? You just that's football. That's the look of it. Ryan, any final points before we say goodbye?
No, that's it. I think we've covered a lot of interesting topics. I hope that everyone enjoyed it. But yeah, so thank you to everyone who's been watching so far, and yeah.
Yeah, so weekly, this is the time we're sort of looking for. A little bit shorter. We had a lot to cover today because of drafts and dilemmas and final questions people have been discussing. But usually we'll be looking at individual matchups and players. I've said earlier, right at the start of the stream, that we're not on about ranks, we're on about decisions and how we come to those decisions and analysing and how we analyse. We're not here to tell you to pick these players. We're here to discuss plans, how teams play, how players play, matching up, you know, this right winger to this left back and things like that, and really analysing tactics and styles like that. This isn't just going to be, here's my team, here's my captain, copy my plan. We're looking sort of deeper, and also specific games. We're not going to cover every single game. Lucy and I finished doing West Ham and Wolves as the last 2 games. If game week 1 was West Ham and Wolves, we're probably not going to do an in-depth discussion because people are not as interested in looking deep into West Ham and Wolves assets. But if it's something like Brighton against Brentford, and there's a good run of games coming up, then that would probably be a fixture that we'll be looking at. But thanks for joining. Hopefully people can spread, like, subscribe, do all that. I always forget to ask people to like, so if you can leave a like, that'd be fantastic. Follow us on Twitter. All our handles are below our names over here and here and there. And good luck for the start of the game week, and we'll see you all later. Thank you very much, guys. Take care. Have a good one.